Hello, beautiful. Welcome to the She's Sacral podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Christian. Let's go ahead and get started with today's episode. Hello, Sacral Beauty. Welcome to the She's Sacral podcast, where we focus on burnout recovery through the power of sacred pleasure. Today, we're diving in and talking about stage 5, which is going to be revision of values. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, then welcome. I'm so happy to have you, and hopefully, you'll get a chance to listen to the other stages of burnout so you can be able to identify what stage you may be in. Stage 5 is where burnout stops affecting your physical body, but it starts reshaping your values. You know, the things you normally wouldn't do or the things that would be against your moral compass, you start doing those things. You may start cutting corners or abandoning your boundaries or compromising your integrity, not because you're a bad person, but simply because you are desperate to survive. So let's talk about what this stage can look like. You can start to justify things you never would have done before. Lying, cheating, stealing, and the things that once mattered to you, like being kind and being honest, or the quality of what you do, or compassion or empathy, that actually starts to feel like a burden. Maybe you've been holding all these great values for yourself, but as you get into the thick of burnout and you're moving into this space of fighting and you're seeing the competition, you're seeing other people cut corners, you're seeing other people not do quote unquote the right thing, and they're getting results, you start to question yourself, like, is it really important that I do things the right way, or can we just get things done, no matter how that gets taken care of? And being honest and being kind and being thoughtful and, having empathy with people, that starts to go out the window because it feels like it's actually harming you when you're in this stage. It's blocking you. It's keeping you from succeeding. Maybe your responsibilities or your relationships begin to feel transactional. You're just kind of going through the motions, you're checking off the boxes, and you're starting to lose that connection that's there. You may begin to resent things that used to reflect your inner values. So, for example, maybe you used to pride yourself on showing up fully for your friends or your family, being the one who remembered the birthdays, to check in after hard days, to make time for heartfelt connections. But now you may start to feel resentful when that friend reaches out to you or texts you needing some level of support. You might think, why does everyone always need something from me? So you start to ignore the messages. Not out of cruelty, but because you are on E. Your tank is empty. So what changed? It's not that you don't care anymore, truly, underneath everything, but it begins to feel like caring is no longer safe because your energy is now depleted and your nervous system is starting to get burned out. So that can be an example of something that once made you feel really good, like being a loving friend and being caring, now feels like a burden. And you may start to avoid or reject it. And it looks different for everyone. Maybe this can apply to your work as well. Maybe you built your business or your career on integrity, on care, on honesty, on depth. You used to pour your heart and soul into every project or client or creative piece because it really mattered to you to do it well and to do it in a way that felt like you when you pour your full self into it. But now you may have reached the space of burnout and you can catch yourself saying, whatever, just get it done. I don't care anymore. I just need to finish it. They won't notice if I skip these little details. It's not a big deal. So you may start cutting corners and delaying reply and showing up half present. You might start shifting the numbers a little bit, copying content or recycling old work, not because you are lazy or unethical, but you have entered into survival mode. So again, those values that you may have held, the integrity, the excellence, the authenticity, now can feel inconvenient or even threaten your depleted system. And when we move into this space, what comes with that? Because we know better. We know our level of integrity. We know this is not who we are. So when we catch ourselves thinking this way and feeling this way or doing these things, it's going to trigger the guilt, the shame, and even more burnout, which is going to deepen that cycle. It's kind of just digging that hole, and it gets harder and harder to get out of. So we shift from a lifestyle that brings us joy and pleasure and things that feel good to us to now winning at any cost and surviving. I think it's challenging for a lot of people on the outside to understand this because it's like, you know better, this is wrong, you are bad, right? Everything's so black and white, but truly you're trying to hold it all together and the work feels heavier and heavier and heavier. You may start to shift into this stage. And so if you find yourself even feeling like, oh, how can I just use some cheat codes here? I know, I wish we all had some better hacks of doing things without losing our sense of integrity in our value system. But if you do feel like you are reaching this stage, I definitely want to support you in shifting out of this energy. So definitely check the links down below for deeper support or to join a like-minded community where we can all support each other in getting out of this stage. And it's a beautiful, safe space. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the root cause and how your sense of survival will restructure morality. Burnout will start to put the brain and nervous system into a fight or flight logic. When you're in chronic stress or burnout, your brain will activate what's called that sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. And this will trigger a neurochemical and structural shift in your brain that helps you to make decisions. So the prefrontal cortex, which is the front portion of your brain, that goes offline. And so your prefrontal cortex is responsible for long-term planning, for ethical reasoning, for impulse control, for empathy, and consequences. But in fight or flight, your body starts to shift the blood flow away from this area because it's seen as it not being essential in a state of crisis. So you stop thinking long-term, and you can't access the deeper values or pause to reflect. And I want to make it clear, it's not because you don't care, but it's because your brain is literally in a state of survival right now. The amygdala, which is the center portion of your brain, it's kind of that fear center that's there, that becomes hyperactive and that starts to take over. You start scanning for threats and constantly looking over your shoulder, pushing you towards taking impulsive and immediate action, regardless of what's ethical. So you start to become more reactive, which makes you more likely to cut corners. You may people please out of fear. You may lie to avoid confrontation. You may ignore the red flags, and you can start to agree to things that you can't do. You may say, yeah, I could do it, knowing good and well you can't really get it done. But again, when your brain is impacted by the stage of burnout and you cannot think clearly, your blood flow is not going to the front portion of your brain. It absolutely affects you on a biological level. That is why talking about burnout is so important, because we may not understand biologically what is happening to us, and we feel like we don't have any sense of control. So taking care of your body, your nourishment, reducing the level of stress, and shifting out of these stages is so important. It literally will change you as a person. And as we've talked about before in the previous stages, dopamine and serotonin are kind of those first hormones to get dropped, which are important for motivation and feeling fulfilled. When those are dropped, that means your values start to feel pointless. So you stop caring about the things that you used to value. You can even start to tell yourself, what is even the point? So you become very apathetic in this state. And when you're apathetic, that makes it really easy to violate your boundaries, your ethics, or even your mission or sense of purpose, just so that you can get through the day. So that's how it affects your brain. Isn't that crazy? Have you ever thought that it was that deep until now? If you never realized it was that deep, go ahead and like this podcast or leave a comment down below so I know that this is resonating with someone. Because once I started to recognize that and learn that, you realize how much you are fighting within yourself, especially when you have such a strong, deep identity in having a nice moral compass, and you're reflecting on who you've been and who you're becoming, and you're in the middle, and you kind of have that devil on one side, angel on the other, and you're like, what is happening right now? Like, why am I making such bad decisions? This is what happens when we're moved into that state of survival. Your cortisol starts to hijack executive function. It really can do that. It makes you more impulsive, it makes you more reactive when it comes to making decisions. Your oxytocin and your serotonin is drastically reduced, which is what's responsible for bonding and connection. So you can be emotionally cold and have decreased empathy. Your nervous system starts to favor more strategy over soul, just to keep you afloat. And so you may also recognize more brain fog, again, rash decisions, erratic behavior, feelings of guilt and shame, or even disgust within yourself when you are acting out of alignment. This is the time where, we've kind of put ourselves on the back burner. We have deprioritized our needs. Now we're moving into this space where we start the process of becoming separated from within ourselves. Now, I know a lot of this can feel like, am I a bad person? No, you're not a bad person. You are burned out. And this isn't you failing morally. This is a type of survival pattern. And maybe you're not in this stage, but you've recognized other people like this. And you're like, what is wrong with them? Why do they act like that? They're in a state of survival. Even if it doesn't look like it, even on the outside, maybe they have a beautiful home. Maybe they have a beautiful car. Maybe they have lots of things. Inside, something inside of them is creating a sense of survival. You may not know what that is if you recognize this in other people, but this is not how we're designed to be. As a human being that has all of their needs met, that is not how we're designed. And when you recognize that, you see how many of us are really in a state of survival. So you're exhausted, you're running on fumes. And the thing about it is, when you start nourishing yourself again, when you start getting more blood flow to your brain, when you start taking care of yourself, your natural integrity will return. This is not about shaming ourselves into being good. And I think that's always the approach that's out there, where it's like, you're going to hell, or I'm going to whip you into shape. No, this stage requires safety for us to return, not punishment. The more we punish ourselves, the more that we move into the state of shame and guilt. The fact that you're listening to this right now is giving you the powerful awareness to be able to make that shift, because now you know the reason of what's causing your decisions. Now, of course, everyone has to be responsible for themselves. It doesn't mean like we could just let people get away with whatever, but it's just to have that level of empathy within ourselves and with others so we can recognize what's really going on underneath the surface. So I want to share with you a couple little tips that I share in the She Sacral community that I want to share with you today. And that first one is to do an integrity reclamation ritual. So maybe just set up your space. If you have a little altar where you pray or meditate, or maybe just a little area, maybe you go to the park, maybe you're at home, whatever it is, anything that feels sacred to you, use that space. And I want you to just quiet your mind and ask yourself, what did I compromise today that hurt me morally? And then also just take a moment to figure out what you are ready to forgive and restore within yourself. We can also do a compassion confession practice. Maybe find one way that you started to act out of alignment within yourself, not to shame yourself, but to soothe yourself. When we hold it in, when it's plaguing our minds, we are ready to release it. It is time to let it go. It is time for it to be released, because it's going to start to shape our subconscious mind into continuing to stay in this state. And offer yourself forgiveness, and then name what you really need. What do you actually need? Do you need rest? Do you need help? Do you need space? What do you need? And give yourself that. Sometimes the denial of our needs is what drives us to this stage. And then just write down 3 values that you want to live by again. Rather, it's being more honest or being more kind or having more grace with people or patience or whatever it is. What values do you want to bring back that you miss? Because I know that you miss those parts of yourself. All right, so wow, we covered a lot in this episode. And I think it's important to recognize that burnout doesn't just steal your energy from you, it steals your moral compass. And again, if you're looking for deeper support to help you get out of this stage, then definitely click the link down below for deeper support. All right, so definitely stay tuned for stage 6, where we dive in and talk more about denial, which is a big part of burnout as well. Thank yourself so much for showing up today, and thank you for tuning in to the She Sacral podcast.